Welcome, everyone. You are here with Bright Lights and our It's All Greek to Me Flipside camp. My name is Renee, and I'm the education coordinator for Bright Lights. I will be serving as your behind-the-scenes host, and my friend Miss Lori will be joining Miss Shelley with hosting and teaching duties. I want to cover a few items before we get started, and then I will turn this over to Shelley and Neil so the fun can begin. Remember, we are in a webinar format, so we can't see your picture or hear you. However, if you want to ask a question or respond to a question, just use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. Type in your question or your comment or your answer, and we will see it and make sure that we relay that. I also want to remind you that we're recording the session. We will have a link in a few days on our YouTube channel to this Flipside camp, as well as all the other ones we have done, so that you can watch it again or you can share it with someone new. And finally, we'd like to thank Black Hills Energy for supporting Bright Lights and sponsoring our Flipside camps this summer. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Shelley and Neil and find out what we are doing this morning. Good morning, guys. Oh, you're muted right now. You got to unmute, and then we can hear your beautiful voices.
How's that?
That's awesome.
Perfect, perfect. Good morning, boys and girls. Thank you. Hey, Lori, how are you?
I'm super. I ate my ambrosia last night. I took off my toga.
I have some pomegranate seeds left. I knocked all of those out. For you kiddos out there that weren't with us yesterday, one of the things we did was we made ambrosia, which is supposed to be the food of the gods. And we also took a look at how we can cut open a pomegranate seeds. It's kind of messy, so be careful. Today, we are going to take a look at a couple different things. We're going to take a look at some hoplite soldiers and how they would fight. We're going to take a look at some of the creatures. So we're going to talk about Medusa and some of those creatures, and Lori's going to share a creature with us a little bit later. We're going to do some interactive slides and things. And we're going to talk about some weaving, and we're going to share some hoplite shields right away. So Neil's going to start out this morning here at the Book Nook talking about myths. Where do these stories come from? Yesterday when I was making ambrosia, one of the stories was about Achilles. And you're going to have a different story about Achilles.
So I'll have the correct one
today, because they're myths. You just don't never know for sure where they come from. So he's going to talk about where myths have come from and how he's going to share some tales from Troy, and then we're going to go from there. So I'm going to leave the Book Nook and let you read.
Okay.
All right.
Cool. So before we read a story today, we're going to talk a little bit about what myths are. And as Shelley said, they can be the same story but have little differences because they started out as oral history, as people didn't write them down. They just told stories to their children or to the other people in their village, and that story would get changed over time. And so almost all of the myths started as oral history and weren't written down, and that explains sometimes there's differences in the stories. Myths are usually about the gods or about supernatural beings with special powers, and usually a myth tries to explain something. Like, you remember yesterday we talked about Persephone and Demeter and Hades, and that explained where the seasons came from. So quite often a myth tries to explain the seasons or the weather or some other aspect of life that they can attribute to the gods and explain how things work. Myths usually take place a long time ago. And what we know of myths now are because at some point somebody did start writing them down. In the case of the Greeks, the first myths were written down in the Iliad and the Odyssey. And those are the stories about the Trojan War and those things that we talked about yesterday. So that's a little bit more about what myths are. And today we're going to have I'm going to read you another myth, another one from the Trojan Wars. And this one is called Tales from Troy, and it's the story of Achilles. that Shelley talked about a little bit yesterday when she talked about his mother dipping him in ambrosia to make him immortal. Listen here in this version of the story of Achilles and see if you hear a difference. The centaur Charon approached the goddess Thetis. "I've come to talk to you about your son, Achilles," he began. Thetis studied the half-man, half-horse for a moment. She knew that he was old and learned. "My prediction is this," said the centaur. "The Greek army will need Achilles to capture Troy. He will be a hero, but he will die there." Thetis knew Charon's predictions were truthful, but she determined to fight fate as well as she could. When Achilles was a baby, Thetis held him by one tiny heel and dipped him in the river Styx, the magical river that separates Earth from the underworld. Though Achilles was half mortal, Thetis wanted to guarantee her son's immortality by dipping him in the water. Still, despite having taken this precaution, she was worried about what the old centaur told her. So, just to be safe, she disguised him and hid him among the daughters of King Lycomedes on the island of Skyros, so he would be free from harm. Meanwhile, Greek troops were preparing to wage war on Troy. Two leaders of the Greek forces, Agamemnon and Odysseus, heard the rumor that the skilled young warrior Achilles was hiding on Skyros. Odysseus decided to find him. Odysseus arrived at the court of King Lycomedes with glittering jewels and other gifts for his host and his many daughters. Odysseus watched the king's daughters eyeing the gifts, all except the tallest daughter, who showed no interest in the treasures. Odysseus shifted the jewels to reveal the shining hilt of a sword. Suddenly, the tallest daughter leapt forward and grabbed it. As she did, Odysseus recognized who it was and called out, "Achilles!" The spell that Thetis had placed on Achilles was broken. At the sound of his name, he remembered who he was, and he agreed to go with Odysseus to fight the war at Troy. Once in Troy, Agamemnon offended Achilles, and Achilles refused to fight. Instead, his good friends Patroclus put on Achilles' armor and fought in his place. The armor was good, but Patroclus was not as skilled as Achilles, and he was slain by the Trojan Hector. Now, Achilles needed new armor. Thetis went to Hephaestus, the blacksmith of the gods, and asked him to make Achilles a magnificent helmet, sword, and shield. Achilles wore them and rejoined the war that day. Vowing revenge for his friend's death, Achilles pursued Hector. Yet every time he approached the Trojan, a misty rain blocked so he couldn't see him. The fighting continued loud, confusing, and bloody for a long time, and at last Achilles spied a Greek soldier leaning on Troy's city wall. The soldier was wearing Achilles' own armor and helmet and shield that Patroclus had borrowed. Achilles realized that that soldier was no Greek. It was the Trojan Hector. Watching from Mount Olympus, the gods and goddesses begged Zeus to intervene. It is fate, Zeus reminded them, and they watched Achilles slay Hector on the battlefield. It is fate. The war continued with Parris, a Trojan warrior, taking a more active role on the battlefield. He was a nervous soldier and a poor shot, but one day he spied Achilles and he heard a voice in his ear. "Shoot the arrow," Apollo whispered. "You'll be the hero when you strike him. Shoot." The arrow Parris shot wobbled from his bow, but Apollo steadied it and sent it skimming along the ground. Achilles suddenly felt a sharp pain in his left heel and was annoyed that he would have to leave the battle to have it bandaged. And why, he wondered, did the pain spread so quickly through his whole body? Why could he no longer move? Meanwhile, Thetis flew to the battlefield looking for her son. She had a terrible feeling that something had gone wrong. She quickly thought back to the day when she had dipped him in the river Styx, holding him by his left heel. His only remaining mortal part was where Parris had struck and killed him. She left the battlefield filled with terrible grief. Odysseus and Ajax began to fight for Achilles' marvelous armor, and Odysseus won, and the shame of losing caused Ajax to kill himself. But Thetis paid no attention. All she could think of was that centaur's long ago prediction. The Greek army will need Achilles to capture Troy. He will be a hero, but he will die there. Fate, again, had the last word. So you see in that story, that version of the story of Achilles, a little difference. Because in that story, to make him immortal, they dipped him in the river Styx instead of in ambrosia. But that's because those stories all started out as oral history, and each time a storyteller tells the story, he or she might change it just a little bit. So Shelley, where are we headed next?
Well, I want to, before we go over to the tech table, I want to show you guys a couple things. In a minute, Neil's going to talk to you about hoplites, and he's going to show you some we're going to share a slide deck with you and show you some really cool hoplite designs. Yesterday, we talked about maybe some symbols that represent you. And so maybe later today, you could grab a paper plate. That's what I did on this. And this would be my hoplite shield. And in a minute, Neil's going to talk to you about hoplite shields. This is a bull. I'm a Taurus. And so I thought, I could be that, have that for my symbol. And then this one is a warrior, probably. I don't know. So this one is made on a cake round. So if I was a baker, I could go to a hobby store and I could buy this cake round. It's made out of cardboard. And so it's the perfect shape. Or if you just have some cardboard laying around, you could make your own hoplite shield. So we're going to go over and share a slide deck about the hoplites. So I'll meet you at the tech table.
All right, Shelley, I have to say, I had never heard of the word hoplite before. I like saying it, so I'm excited to hear more about that since I don't really know what they are.
Excited to share this with you too. All right, let me share our screen. Do you see it?
Perfect.
There it is. Do you see our screen?
Yep, absolutely.
All righty.
I have to tell you that it's from Jenna. She says, Mrs. Clayburn, you should have used a cat as your symbol.
Oh, she is so right. I'm going to tell you, Jenna, I've been making face coverings getting ready for school, and 2 of them are cats. So you're right. Now, do you see my slide deck? Or do you see me?
You see all Greek to me, hoplite shields. And on
Here we go.
All right, so this
yellow
of a Greek warrior, and they called them hoplites. So that's the term hoplite refers to Greek soldiers. And they are, this soldier you can see he's got a shield, and you can see he's wearing some armor. The armor is made of bronze and leather. And then this one has a spear as his weapon. They also sometimes use short swords. So hoplite is just a Greek soldier. This particular picture is of a Spartan. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the different Greek city-states as we look at these. So this is the formation that the Greek soldiers would fight in. It's called a phalanx. And so you see it's a large group of soldiers, and their shields, they interlock them to protect themselves, and then their spears poke out, so they're almost like a porcupine. You can't get close because those spears are there, and they would move this formation towards the enemy and just kind of crush them with the sheer weight of the formation and the weapons. They also had, I don't have a picture of it, but they had kind of a cool maneuver they called the turtle, where they would pop their shields over their heads. So it would be like the shields would all be on top of them interlocked, and that would protect them from arrows, because they also use bows and arrows to fight, and those arrows would just land on the shields and protect the formation that way. So two new words for you today: a hoplite, a Greek soldier, and a phalanx, the formation that they fought in. So these are some pictures of some shields, and you can see that they have all different kinds of decorations on them. The decorations quite often represented their city-state, the city that they came from, because the Greeks weren't one unified country. they were lots of little cities throughout the Greek peninsula, and your loyalty was to your city and the king or the ruler of your city. So here you can see the owl was a symbol of Athens. You can see Corinth has Pegasus, and also this dove over here is Corinth. That black and red dove is a Corinth symbol. So you can look through here and you can see the different cities and see what some of their symbols were. Quite often it'd be a god or a monster or beast of some kind. And then you might recognize from the picture of the hoplite I showed you, he was a Spartan. And so that inverted V on the shield was the symbol of Sparta. And that's, you can see all the different city-states had different symbols. This is a map of Greece at the time and some of the main city-states. You can see there's Athens and Sparta that we've talked about. I think we're going to talk about Delphi later today because that's where there was an oracle that you could go to and find out what the future held from the oracle at Delphi. Argos was a great, and Corinth were great seaports. And so a lot of their symbols had to do with the sea and oceans. So you can kind of see the area that where the Greek city-states were. And remember that they were not one unified country. Each of those cities was like an independent little group. And sometimes they fought each other. And sometimes they all got together to fight a common enemy like Troy. And Troy's not on this map because we don't know for sure where Troy is. Because remember when the Trojan horse broke down, they tricked them and broke down the gates, the city of Troy was entirely destroyed. And so archaeologists are still looking for what was the location of Troy. Here's a couple close-ups of shields. Again, on the left is a Spartan shield, and on the right is a fish. I don't know what city-state that was from, but my guess would be it'd be one of the ocean port ones, like possibly Corinth or Argos.
Cool, I love that.
And then on the left on this one is a Spartan or Trojan helmet. And then the griffin on the other side, and again, I don't know what city-state that is, but lots of them use these monstrous beasts and animals that had characteristics from more than one animal.
That's cool.
Neil, I was just thinking that they're so interesting because they're decorative and kind of fancy, but they also are serve a purpose to protect them. It's fun to combine things that are useful with things that are beautiful.
They almost look like mascots. I think of, when I look at these, I think of our high school mascots and our elementary mascots. They're very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, most of them are either the symbols of your city-state, or they might be a creature or something from one of the myths, one of the stories from your city. And remember, they have multiple gods, so it might be the god that you think is most important or that you worship. So these are just a few more pictures to give you some ideas. And there you can see the bull that Shelley drew.
That's prettier.
And Pegasus in that picture. There's some snakes on one of them.
I want you to look up in the corner because we're going to read very, very soon the story about Medusa. I know Medusa is a lot of people's favorite Greek myth. And so I don't know. Look at those fangs. That is creepy. All right. Oh, these are different.
Yeah, and again, you see some different helmets. You see the octopus, which would be the oceans again. There's the owl from Athens.
Or Athena. Athena always had an owl.
Right.
That's one of hers.
Right. Well, Athena was the patron goddess of Athens. That's where Athens got its name.
Very cool.
And there's Cerberus in that picture too, the three-headed dog.
Oh yeah.
That guards the gates, guards the gate at the river Styx into the underworld.
Very cool. I like those. So maybe today, this afternoon sometimes, it's tough when you just search Hoplite shields on the internet. I want to warn you that sometimes it takes you to places that you want to buy a replica or something. We don't want you to do that. So rather than do that, grab your paper plate or your cake round or your cardboard and just make a cool design that you like. There are plenty of these on the internet, but just want to warn you that sometimes you go to a place that you don't really want to go to, which happens
They
on
might
the internet.
Yep, they might want to search under Google Images of Hoplite, and that way they might just come up with pictures that they could just use for inspiration. I am looking at the one with the 3 legs that for inspiration.
That is crazy. I would like
love
to.
it.
I don't know what the story behind that one is.
I'm gonna go back, maybe not, to this one. There's that Medusa up in the corner because I am going to read a story about Perseus and Medusa. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Hi guys. Here is Perseus and Medusa. Perseus and his mother Danae lived happily on an island. That is, until the king of the island decided that he wanted to marry Danae, even though she did not want to marry him. The king wanted to force her to marry him, but he knew he would have a problem with Perseus if he tried to do that. So he came up with a plan to get Perseus out of his way by sending him on a faraway and dangerous mission. The king told Perseus to bring back the head of Medusa, one of the 3 Gorgon sisters, as a gift to him. Medusa had live snakes covering her head instead of hair. Snakes, one of my least favorite things in the world. However, the scariest thing about her was that anyone who looked at Medusa's face would instantly be turned into stone. Perseus had a difficult task in front of him. To begin with, he couldn't find the Gorgon lair where the sisters lived, even after long days of searching. Feeling very frustrated, Perseus prayed to the gods to help. His request was answered by Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and Hermes, the mischievous messenger and son of Zeus. They gave Perseus winged sandals to fly him to the end of the world where the Gorgons lived, a cap that made him invisible, a sword, a bag, and a mirrored shield. And that's going to be important, that mirrored shield. Perseus found the Gorgon's lair surrounded by stone statues that used to be men. He raised his shield and saw that Medusa and her sisters were asleep. The shield was very important. It was really shiny, so Perseus could look at the reflections in it, rather than directly at Medusa, which saved him from being turned into stone. He put on his cap and became invisible and flew to them. He used the sword to take off Medusa's head. He still could look at it, and carried it in a magical bag. His winged sandals allowed him to escape quickly before the other Gorgon sisters could catch him and take revenge for Medusa's death. On his way home, Perseus rescued a woman named Andromeda who was being attacked by a sea monster. On the way home, see a woman attacked by a sea monster. Perseus carefully took Medusa's head out of the bag without looking at it and showed it to the monster, turning it into stone. When Perseus returned home, he found that after his mother refused to marry the king, he forced her to become his servant. Perseus was furious. He was livid. He stormed into the palace and said, "Let all who are my friends shield their eyes." Then he showed Medusa's head, turning the king to stone. I like that. Don't like that story. Now, we're going to talk about some creatures. And Lori, do you have something to show us?
Yes. Just a second, I got to get ready. It takes me a second to get it ready. Okay, I'm ready.
All right, what do you think? Kiddos, Greeks out there, what do you think Lori represents? What creature? A one-eyed, yeah! Jenna got it, yeah, Lily got it. A Cyclops. Whoa, you look good. Or Monster Inc., one of them.
Yes. I like to wear it as a hat as well.
On those sunny days, Connor gets
Right,
it.
just to keep the sun off my eyes with my Cyclops visor.
I love it. I love it. I'm glad you don't have the snakes. I'm glad about that.
Well,
I'm going to share my
and
screen.
I'm glad so many friends knew what that was.
They did know what that was. All right, I'm going to get out this Hoplite one. And I am going to open up this one because we're going to take a look at some heroes and creatures. And just like yesterday, you guys responded with your answers. So are you ready? Here we go. Lori, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Oh my gosh, right off the bat. My mother, Thetis, dipped me into the river Styx to make me live forever. It was almost 100% successful. You guys know this. We just heard that story. Got it, everybody.
They're doing a great job.
Looks like Achilles. Achilles was a hero of the Trojan War, the greatest of all Greek warriors. Parris shot him in the heel with an arrow, his only vulnerable spot. So if you ever have someone say, that is so-and-so's Achilles heel, that means that's their weak spot. That's where that phrase comes from. Here we go. I'm a prince of Athens, and with the help of Princess Ariadne of Crete, defeated a horrible monster. So I'm a prince of Athens. So that rules out maybe a couple.
Yeah.
Okay. What do we think?
Oh,
I
don't.
Yes. So Theseus, his most celebrated adventure was his slaying of the fearsome Minotaur of King Minos. Okay. Here's that whole.
That was a lot of right answers. A lot of friends knew that one. Oh.
My home is amazing. Amazing. That's going to be your hint.
Okay. Oh, we have a lot of good answers here.
Okay, you think you see the right one, Laurie?
I think so.
Yeah, good job. The Minotaur was a monster with the body of a man and the head and tail of a bull. Theseus killed the Minotaur with the sword of Aegis. He's cute. All right, here we go. I am one of the three, you're going to get this one. I'm one of the three monstrous gorgons. It is probably for the best if you don't gaze into my beautiful eyes.
Oh, we've got good answers here. They all know.
It is Medusa. Medusa is described as a winged human female. I didn't know that. Living venomous snakes in place of hair. Those who gazed at your eyes would turn to stone. All right, here we go. I spent a lifetime looking for a golden fleece. We haven't read this story yet.
We didn't read that one.
We haven't read this one. That would be a great one for you guys to read this summer. I spent a lifetime looking for a golden fleece. Yep, looks like a lot of you know. Some of you know this story. It is Jason. Hero Jason was famed for his expedition with the Argonauts. As the sailors on their ship, the Argo, were known in search of the golden fleece. There were lots of shields that had that.
Right, and that would be a really good myth for you to look up and read if you're interested, because they had all kinds of adventures. It was a long voyage, and they had all kinds of adventures on their search for the golden fleece.
Very cool. Pick that up. All right. I possess powerful strength, even though my wardrobe consists of a reed pipe, a shepherd's crook, and a crown of pine needles. Well, we can rule out Jason. I don't know. Rule out Nymph. Can you rule out Echo? Pan. Pan is a satyr and Greek god of shepherds and flocks. And those that love the Greek stories by, oh, come on, someone help me. No. The author that the kids read right now.
Riordan.
Yeah. There's Pan in that story. The bottom half of his body was like a goat, with the top half of his body being like other men. Pan fell in love with the nymph, daughter of Laden, the river god. Rick Riordan, yes. I knew you guys would help me out with that. I'm a very crafty weaver, and I love to challenge the gods. So this would be someone that's not a god or goddess. And we're going to take a look at this story next. You got it. It is Arachne. Arachne was a weaver who acquired such skill in her art that she ventured to challenge Athena, goddess of war. Even though Arachne was a beautiful spinner, Athena turned Arachne into a spider. We're going to show some weaving in just a minute. I was very clever, and my cleverness prevented me from turning into stone. So Perseus chased the meteor or Jonah. Cleverness, we just read about him, yes. Perseus. Perseus was one of the greatest heroes in Greek mythology, most renowned for beheading the only mortal Gorgon, Medusa, and used her severed head, capable of turning onlookers into stone, as a mighty weapon in his subsequent adventures. Perseus. All right. Even though I am not a full-blooded god, everyone knows that I'm the greatest hero in Greek mythology. And this might be a trick question for us. Even though I'm not full-blooded, he's pretty proud of himself. He's got an ego. Let's see. Hercules, Heracles, Zeus, or Cupid? I see some A's, I see some B's. I don't see many Cupids. It's A and B. Hercules was the greatest of the mythological Greek heroes. He was famous for his incredible strength, courage, and intelligence. He completed many daunting tasks. There'd be another great stories to read.
12 labors of Hercules.
Yeah. Hercules is actually his Roman name. The Greeks called him Heracles. There it is. Zeus, and I've got to tell you, this is one that I don't think I had ever heard this story about. So I'm going to really watch to see if some of you get this one, because I think this is a toughie. Zeus hit me with 100 lightning bolts and cast me into a bottomless pit of Tartarus. Wow, he must have been having a bad day. Medusa, centaur, nymph, or typhon. This is one that I know you great Greek mythologists out there, you're going to probably get this. Let's see. Typhon. This is one of those stories that I'm going to have to check out. Typhon is a huge winged monster whose head brushed the stars, human in form above the waist, with snake coils below and fire flashing from his eyes. Athena actually said that Zeus was a coward, and this led the god to attack Typhon. Typhon, the monster. Oh, you guys, you are a Greek beast. Excellent. A lot of you got all of those right. I told you that we were going to talk about Arachne and Athena, and we're going to talk about some weaving and show you some weavings that maybe you can do later this week, this afternoon or later this week. So I'm going to read you. I'm going to stay right here and read the story about Arachne and Athena. And we know Athena, you don't want to mess with her. to want to challenge her, and Arachne is just kind of proud of herself in maybe kind of a conceited kind of way. There once was a girl named Arachne who was a talented weaver. Arachne had studied for a time under Athena, the Greek goddess of wisdom and war, who was also a masterful weaver. Word of Arachne's beautiful tapestries spread around Greece. People thought she must have been trained by Athena to be able to create such amazing items. Even though she had been trained by Athena, Arachne denied it. She was very proud of her skills and said she didn't want to share credit with anyone, not even a goddess. She even went so far as to claim that she was a better weaver than the goddess Athena. Athena heard what Arachne had been saying and decided to speak to her. Athena disguised herself as an old woman and went to visit Arachne to explain the importance of not offending the gods. She reminded Arachne that gods and goddesses were very powerful. She gave her a warning. They can greatly help those who honor them, or they can severely punish those who cross them. Arachne replied back to the old woman, "If Athena doesn't like my words, then let her show skills in a weaving contest." Remember, she doesn't know who she's talking to there. Suddenly, the disguise of the old woman vanished, and there stood the radiant goddess Athena. Athena accepted the contest challenge. 2 looms were set up, and they both worked rapidly, their fingers gliding back and forth as they wove their beautiful tapestries. For her design, Athena created an image showing all the gods and goddesses in their glory up on Mount Olympus. Arachne, refusing to back down, decided to display stories that showed the gods in the poorest light, making fun of them. Seeing Arachne's work, Athena was so angry at the disrespectfulness that she tore Arachne's tapestry into shreds. Athena said to her, "Vain girl, since you love to weave so very much, why don't you just go and spin forever?" Athena then turned Arachne into a spider. It is said that all spiders have been punished for Arachne's boasting, since they are required to live their entire short lives with their own webs. So that is how Arachne, a girl, became Arachne, a spider. Now I'm going to change our view here and go to our camera. And I'm going to show you just a little bit here. I'm going to show a couple ways that you can do some weavings, all right? So this one is a weaving that some past students, Lauren, she left it with me, thank you, Lauren, can do just on an old CD or DVD, all right? Here's one, too, that we started, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. And then this one is more like kind of the loom that is mentioned in the story almost. So first I'm going to show you the CD way, all right? So sometimes when I show you a craft, we go pretty fast because it's on the website. And so this one I'm going to take a little bit more time. I'm going to start with just a CD, and I have a pretty long piece of yarn here. And the first thing you have to do is you have to set up the ribs, I guess, of our weaving. And you can have as many of these ribs as you want. I believe an odd number of ribs, I don't know, and I'm sure that's not the right weaving term. If you're a weaver out there, I apologize. I think are the better. So I put this around the CD through the middle hole, and I tie a knot, and I can trim, if that bugs you, that little tail, I can trim it. And then I'm just going to wrap my yarn through the CD to give it those spokes.
Shelley, how long is that blue yarn that you started with? Is it like as wide as your arms from fingertip to fingertip, or was?
Yeah, it's a little bit. I bet if you do a yard, this one's a little bit more than a yard, but it does get tangled. So I think if you just make a yard, it's good.
So a yard would be like 3 feet.
3 feet, or, when I measure a yard when I'm in the fabric store, I take the fabric and I put it by my nose out to my hand. I stretch out my arm, and that is an estimate of about a yard, kind of like my, knuckle is about the estimate of it. I always tell kids. So,
and this isn't super precise. I mean, everyone can kind of do their own thing here, and they might try one and say, oh, I'm going to try another one. This time I'll do it a little differently.
Exactly. And I didn't even count my spokes. Oh, you. So I'm just going to, and I just tied it off. All right. So here's one I just did with you now. Here's one I just did yesterday, and I just tied it off. Now, you can use all kinds of different yarns. So you can see that this one that Lauren started for us, it's that fuzzy yarns.
Oh, yeah.
I dug into my yarn, and I just have a plain old yarn that you can get at any craft store. All right. And for this one, Lori, I probably started with about the same, about a yard. Because you get tangled really easily. So I'm going to take my first yarn, and I'm just going to tie it around one of those spokes. Now I'm going to call it double knot. I never know knots very well. Is that a double knot, Neil?
It's a double granny knot.
Double granny knot. Neil is my knot guy. Neil's that Eagle Scout.
A scout would never have a granny knot. I'll just let you know.
Tie that off, and now this yarn, sometimes I kind of wrap it around my fingers so I can almost make, back in the old days, there was this little thing called a tatting needle or something, and you kind of just wind it up there, because I am going to...
Oh, it's like a shuttle.
Yes, it's like a shuttle. So I'm going to go under, and then I'm going to go over, and then I'm going to go under.
So did you make the white part really tight, or is there a little give there?
They're pretty tight. They are pretty. So I went under, over, and I'm just going to go all the way like that. Now, one of the things that helps is, as you're doing that, it's a little blurry, as you're doing that, is to make it tight around the wheel, that inner spokes, because I'm going to just continue. So that's under, over. I'm just going to continue going round and round and round. Now, when I do that, like this one, you can see that, I don't even know if this is an odd number spoke or even number spoke, but I hope everyone, you can see that I'm kind of pushing that pretty tight. Jenna took Greek class, and I think Jenna made one of these, and she probably can chat some advice too. Or Marin did, I think Marin did. But the tighter of that spoke, the better. You really see it with this one, with the different colors that I did, but you're gonna wanna push, push, push. If all of a sudden on this green one, I got tired of my green and I wanted to change color, I could just grab a different yarn, and I'm gonna, I'm not gonna go where it's really close. I don't have any room to tie my granny knot, my double granny knot. Tie it. Neil said I should tie a square knot, but I don't know what that is. So I'm just gonna tie it on. So I'm gonna go from my green yarn to my blue yarn. So blurry. And then, Lori, I'm going to trim the tails.
Okay.
And I could leave the tails for some more texture, but I don't need to. And then as I go, as I keep going around, then all of a sudden I switch from my green to my blue.
Oh.
And I just would keep going just like that. I tied it together. And then I've gone all the way. I'm going to keep going. And I tell you, with a little practice, you kind of get that rhythm down. And here's the great thing. If all of a sudden you make a mistake and you go under instead of over, it doesn't matter. Okay? So you're going to go around and around and around. Now, when you're at the point where you think you can either, and I didn't say this earlier, but it doesn't really matter. Sometimes there's writing on the side. These sides don't matter. But I'm going to keep on going. This one, the person that did this, maybe me, thought, I'm going to stop right here. And I just tied it onto a spoke. This one from Lauren, she went all the way to the end. And when I get to the end, once again, you can just tie it to one of the spokes. Now, I've had people tell me that you can just cut the spokes off around here and hang it, or have your little holder. You put like my glass on there so it doesn't get condensation all over or whatever. But to tell you the truth, we've left them on the CD and we've just tied, some kids have done both sides, and then we just tied a hook on it and we hang it in the window or hang it in our room or just on the wall, and it just makes a fun evening. So what do you think, Lori? Do that?
Oh my gosh, I love it. I have little scraps of like the fuzzy, thicker yarn, like the chunky kind. So I'm thinking this is a great way to use up my little scraps. And I'm thinking I have some green and red yarn, and I thought maybe I would make a Christmas ornament.
Oh, that's a cute idea. Yeah. And there might be other round kinds of objects that you guys can think of that works, but the CD works really slow. And stacks of CDs that we just don't use anymore. And so I like to think of anything that I can kind of upcycle, and this is definitely an upcycle. Now, if you don't have CDs around, you probably have a piece of cardboard. So, with this whole thing that's going on, we have lots of things get delivered to our house. So I have lots of cardboard laying around. So I took this cardboard. Now this was tough, and so you might need some help from someone. I did use a knife to cut these little slits. I used a knife to help me cut this out of the box. And then I used a knife to cut these little slits here. And you can see on this one, I have lots more of those little slits. They're about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, and this is going to help me make my loom. So I have the slits on both sides. And I'm going to I started out by just putting my yarn through it and tying a knot on the back. And I'm just going to go from the bottom to the top, pretty tight. Not so tight that I can't get the yarn through it, but fairly tight because I also don't want it to be loose and fall. And I just go in and out of my cardboard to make my loom. And then I give myself a little tail to tie it on the back. My fingernails working here. And I know some of you have done school, because I know that you do weavings at school sometimes. So I'm going to trim off my tails. And so now I've made myself my own loom, just like Arachne and Athena. And so I'm going to take my yarn And I first have to take my yarn that I'm going to go weaving back and forth, and I'm going to tie it off. Okay.
This one, Shelley, seems like it would be fun to find really contrasting colors.
Yeah, because you do see the ribbing kind of through it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But also, just like on the CD, if you want to change color, you just tie off a different color and just continue going. And so just like on the CD, I'm going to go in, I'm going to go under, over, and when I come to this end, I'm just going to back up and do it again. So here, I got to the end, I went under, over, and when I get to the end, I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to keep going. All right. So for this one, once again, I'm going to do my loom. I'm going to go under, over with my yarn after I tied it off. If I want to change color, I can tie and change the colors of it. And for this one, when it's done, because I can reuse my loom, for this one, you really would come and you take your scissors and you're just going to cut right at the top, and then I would do it again at the bottom, and then you would take your weaving off of that cardboard. All right, what do you think?
I love it.
I would love if you try this and send us a picture to Bright Light so we can see your weaving.
We'd love to see them. You can have a parent take a picture. We'd love to have you holding it, and then just have them posted on our Facebook page for Bright Lights, and then we can all see the great artwork you're doing.
Excellent. Will you head us back to the book?
Heading back to the book nook.
Head back to the book nook. Here we are.
Why is it Neil singing, Shelley?
I know. We were hoping we were going to play a tune, weren't you? We are almost out of time, but I wanted to talk to you about a couple things. And raise your hand if you love to write. The teacher in me loves to see those hands. On the Bright Lights website, we've included this little form called a Mythology Biopoem. You can write your own myths, which a lot of you are great writers, I know. And so you could take something like the stars or constellations or weather, or the heat or the sun, and come up with a myth explaining that. And that makes a great myth. Sometimes writing can be a little overwhelming. And so we've put this on the Bright Lights website. It's called a Mythology Biopoem. And you all, a lot of you have done biopoems at school where you're describing yourself with a biopoem. For this, you're going to pick a Greek creature or a Greek hero. And so there's lines on it. So first you name your god, goddess, or creature. And then you have how they were created. 4 adjectives. Remember, adjectives, what? Describe. What are they known for? What do they love? What do they fear? 3 ing verbs. Remember, verbs are action. These are action verbs that are going to end in ing. And then repeat the name of the god, goddess, or creature. So on the sheet, it has what you have to do, all right? And then it has an example, and they've read one about Pegasus. So here's what it says about Pegasus. Pegasus, formed from Medusa's head, beautiful, graceful, wild, and loyal, carried Zeus's thunderbolts, loves flying, serving, and Zeus, fears being stung by flies, who knew? Caring, helping, soaring, Pegasus. So I wrote one. All right, I chose Athena. So here's mine. Athena, child of Zeus, mighty, wise, courageous, intelligent, wisdom and war, loves all owls and olive trees, fears nothing, spearing, protecting, warring, Athena. So check that out. That is on the Bright Lights website, as well as a little matching to see if you can match your god, goddess, or creature with a little description. We'll take that test later and see how we do.
Okay.
What do you think? So we've had great fun in these last 2 days. We hope you have too. We hope you make ambrosia. You try out a pomegranate. You go online or go to the library and check out some more Greek mythology books. You can see all these Greek mythology books that we have. There are some great ones. Check out those stories and write. Read and write. And that's what we'd love to see you do. So Lori, thank you so much for being our Cyclops today. And Renee, we're going to pass it back to you. Have a great summer, everybody.
Bye.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. I love these camps, right? Because you guys are always left with some fun activities to do. So whether you decide to weave, or you decide to write a story, or you decide to do all those things, you have lots of resources. So go to the Bright Lights page and you can find some of those resources on there. We have 2 more camps left, and then that is it for this summer. Tomorrow we will have a sign language camp, and on Thursday we have a drawing camp with Mr. Bob Reeker. Go to the Bright Lights webpage, brightlights.org, and you will see the schedule, and you can register. And like they said, if you weave something or write something and you want to share a picture with us on Facebook, we would love to see that. One last reminder, whoever signed you up for this will get an email, and we would love for that person to complete a real quick survey for us that tells us how you, what you thought about this camp and any ideas you might have for future camps. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye, and we will see you hopefully tomorrow, and if not tomorrow, hopefully Thursday. And we hope you have fun this afternoon doing some activities. All right, thanks guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.